Hey guys, Dan Jessup here, Hot Rod Reverend. Welcome to the channel. Glad you're here today. And we're going to take a look at aviation gasoline. This is a can of 100 octane low lead aviation fuel that I've been running in my 1955 Ford Fairlane over the summer months and the fall months. And I want to give you a report on how things have gone and how well the car has done. Some of you may be wondering, can I run aviation gasoline in my vehicle? I'm not going to give you the answer to that. I'm just going to give a report on what took place with my 1955 Ford Fairlane running the 292 Y-block Ford to 301 ECZG heads, which is about 9-to-1 compression. Probably a little bit lower than that with the composition head gaskets that I have on the engine. At any rate, we do have the larger valve heads and I believe the 69cc combustion chambers. If you've been on my blog, hotrodreverend.com, you've seen a lot of my articles, or if you've seen some of the other videos on my YouTube channel, you know that I am not an advocate of running ethanol fuel, 10%, any percent ethanol fuel in a classic car, especially one that has a carburetor. Anything open to the air, if you run an ethanol gasoline, you're going to have problems with it collecting water, all that kind of thing, leaving junk in your carburetor, your fuel bowl. If your lines are not prepared for ethanol, what the alcohol will do, it will eat up some of the rubber and different things. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube about that, a lot of stuff all over the internet. I've posted my own findings. If you go back, you'll see some differences in the fuels and what I've run, especially when it comes to boiling points. Boiling points in the summertime is probably one of the largest factors, and I've got some video. All right, it's hot outside. It's 95-degree weather or more easily, and just got back from a 35-mile trip on the interstate. We were running 185 in temperature. Now we're up a little bit less than 200. And ran the AC the whole time too, but still engine kept 185 at cruise. But you can see here too that the fuel is kind of bubbling up and all of that. So maybe easier to hear me with the fan running. Let's just zoom in, but you can see it bubbling and percolating. So alcohol has a much lower boiling point than regular or pure gasoline. So if you have some problems with fuel boiling out of your carburetor fuel bowl, heat, all that kind of stuff, it's probably due to ethanol and how much ethanol content is actually in your gasoline. It's supposed to be 10%. A lot of times it ends up being 15, sometimes even more than that, percentage-wise, percentage points for ethanol in your fuel. You want to be careful about that. Here's my experiment, and here's what I did. I've been running pretty much 89 octane fuel that's been pure gas with no ethanol in it for a long time in the 1955 Ford. Basically, the way I horse around with the engine, I've got a 3-speed. It does have an overdrive tail shaft, but I like to get on it quite a bit. I have a 4-barrel carburetor, vacuum secondaries. I get roughly 17 miles to the gallon. Lately, I had been going up to Willow Springs Racetrack. Willow Springs Raceway is not too far from me here in California. It's about, 45 minutes away, maybe a little bit less than that, north on 14, Highway 14 from Lancaster. It's not very difficult to get to. And I filled up 5-gallon cans and just brought the fuel back, visited the racetrack. Very nice track. It's a very historic track. A lot of racing goes on there, and pretty much is known for being a road course. The movie Ford versus Ferrari, some of those scenes were filmed out there. So it's a very well-known track, and they have race gasoline with no ethanol in it. So I have been using that, but I wanted to try the 100 octane low lead because it's available here in town. I can just take my cans in about 3 or 4 miles away, go buy it in town, and fill up my car. 1955 Ford has a 17-gallon tank. I drained the tank completely with an electric fuel pump, got all the fuel out of there, and then I filled it up with 100 octane low lead aviation gasoline, and I got prepared for my experiment. Now, I did not change the way that I drive the car. Summertime, fall, I would still step on it. I'm still burning rubber every once in a while, swapping gears, going up to $5,000, all kinds of stuff. So I didn't go out on the highway to try to see what kind of gas mileage I could get and all of that. For the most part, there are some things that I discovered that were a benefit to running this fuel, and some other things that I'll talk about that probably would be a detriment if it's done long term. So here's number one. Here's the first benefit that I discovered, and that was better gas mileage. My gas mileage went up from 17 miles a gallon to 19 miles a gallon. Now, with the cost, and I got the little receipt right here of what I just recently spent, I can tell you that the increase in miles per gallon is not worth it, because in town I paid $8.16 a gallon for 100 octane low lead aviation gasoline right here in Lancaster, California. So obviously gasoline here, 87 octane with ethanol, 10% ethanol is going to be right at 430, 435 most places right now. It's November of 2024. So I'm not quite double, but it's close. Second benefit, I would say, to running the fuel is that I could tell a particular difference in power. The power was really noticeable. I know I don't have any data for quarter-mile times and all the rest of it, but I could really tell that I got a kick in the seat of the pants running this Octane. So that tells me, when I think about the compression ratio, what I have in the vehicle, maybe, of course, the cam helps out with some of the dynamic compression ratio and so on. But all that being equal, there was a little bit of a boost I got for running 100 octane here, okay? So first thing, increase in fuel mileage. Second thing is the power. And I'd say the third thing in running aviation gasoline as opposed to running something with ethanol in it is how clean it is. And when I say that, I mean it doesn't leave deposits. Basically, you can leave aviation gasoline in your tank for a year or more and not run the vehicle, leave it in your carburetor. It's not going to decompose. It's not going to break down. You'll fire it right up, and it's instantaneous, just like you bought it last week. So those really, to me, are the three things that I discovered that were a huge benefit to running aviation gasoline in the 1955 Ford. I have poured a couple of samples of the fuels here. I don't know if you can tell which one is which, if you know what the ethanol 87 octane looks like and the aviation gasoline with 100 and the low lead content. But let's take a closer look. And I've got ethanol gasoline, 10% over here on the right. And on the left, I've got the 100 octane low lead aviation gasoline. Unfortunately, I can't let you know what the smells are like, but there is a big difference in smell between these two fuels. You can definitely tell that. There's also a big difference when these two fuels burn out of the exhaust. I really, and maybe it's just me, I really like the smell of the aviation gasoline, the exhaust. To me, it does smell a whole lot better than what comes out with ethanol. But there is a little bit of a difference here in the way these fuels appear. And I don't really have an eyedropper to take a look at it, but sometimes the consistency kind of fool you a little bit. This looks like it's a little denser. Again, I've got nothing scientific to prove that, but it would seem that way as opposed to the 10% 87 octane. Now, there are some downsides. I've already mentioned this. Number one is a huge cost. So this is not something I'm going to be doing long term. Number two, you got to take some gas cans. You got to figure out a way to fill up your car. Most often, you're not going to be able to pull up to a gas pump and just fill up with 100 octane aviation gasoline and get it down there at the airport. That's just not going to happen for a lot of us. There are some racetracks. In other words, I could go up to Willow Springs. I could buy it. I think up there, the 100 octane is around $9, $9.25 or so a gallon. And of course, that's racing fuel and all of that for that track that they sell. But the cost is detrimental. The idea that you've got to go and use gas cans to go get the fuel, that's also detrimental. And then the third part would be this, is that in running such high octane, you're going to leave a lot of carbon deposits behind unless your engine's really built to utilize all the octane that the fuel's putting out. Let me show you what one of my spark plugs looks like now. I'm just going to pull number 5, but all of these spark plugs, they all look exactly the same. So I'll just show you what one looks like. Let's look at this sucker here. You can tell that it's a little bit on the brownish side and there's some carbon band left over. It's not bright. Maybe I can get away with running a hotter plug because I've got such higher octane. But all of my spark plugs look like this. Now, I didn't do the normal test of shutting off the ignition, you know, and not idling. So it has been idling a little bit. And that's why it looks a little bit on the rich side. But all the same, there's a lot of carbon here. Just to recap, the 3 things that I really found out were a benefit to running aviation gasoline or high octane, low lead gasoline. Number 1, there's a power boost. Number 2, I got better fuel mileage. And number 3, I didn't have to be so concerned about a lot of things with what ethanol would do and eating up rubber lines or leaving deposits or everything else like that. Aviation gasoline has a long shelf life. That's probably one of the biggest benefits, especially if you run a vehicle, classic car, and you let it sit for a long time. There are some downsides. Number 1 would be the cost. Number 2 may be some of the availability, difficult to get, or the fact you got to take cans to go get that. Number 3, your vehicle most likely, like mine, will not need such high octane. And like you saw that spark plug there and the deposited carbon stuff left on it, it's just not burning the way that it's supposed to. I'd imagine if I got a hotter plug, if I maybe fiddled with the ignition and did some things with the advance and all that kind of things, I could probably get even more juice out of it, knowing I wasn't going to run it long. I didn't want to fiddle with it too much and just see what it would do with my current settings and everything else with the carburetor. But pretty happy with it. It's been a lot of fun. And hopefully that answers some questions of whether or not you can run aviation gasoline in your classic car. Okay, guys, that's a wrap for today. I hope you can stay around on the channel, look at some of the other technical videos I've got, and take some advice from those or any kind of tips that would be a help to you. Don't forget, visit hotrodreverend.com. You'll be glad you did. A lot of things about my biography there, who I am, why I have that name. A lot of articles and pictures and videos on the work on this car right here, the 1955 Ford Fairlane Club Sedan I've owned since I was 16 years old. We'll see you. Have a good day.